Hello, this is Phil Jones again. Welcome back. This section is about present tense of AR verbs. If you have visited before, then you can probably skip forward the first few parts of this. If you haven't visited, it is important that you listen. This is intended for review only. You will have seen this in class before. You will have practiced extensively with it in class before. So this is a review. It is really important that if you're trying to gain a different perspective, you review the information from the book on your own. So turn this off, read what's in the book about AR verbs. Then listen to my explanation, another perspective. As we go through the practice activities, pause the video as needed. I'm not going to be pausing for you. I'll do a slight pause, but it will likely not be enough for you to process. The value of this is that you process the information on your own. That is crucial to your success. Yeah, you can wait till I give you the answer. It's not the same. I will do some practice activities outside the book. And as we do those, again, I encourage you to pause, and finally rewind, repeat, and review this information as many times as necessary. And at the end, I will give you some additional resources that you can look at for further practice. And if nothing else works, do a Google search. There's all sorts of practice out there, even if you feel that you need more. So with that said, I'm in chapter 1, and we're moving forward thinking about AR verbs. As you know, in Spanish, there are 3 types of verbs: AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. Right now, the focus is simply on AR verbs, the regular ones. At this point in the course, you've realized that there are some irregular verbs also, but this section is only about regular verbs. So, big question, what does conjugating verbs mean anyway? Even in English, so that you can have something to tie this to. It's when the person changes. So, for example, if I'm using the I form, I speak, I eat, I drink, I dance, whatever that's one conjugation in the present tense. And right here we're only concentrating on the present tense. If I'm speaking or someone else is speaking and they say we eat, we drink, we dance, then the conjugation has changed based upon the subject. I went from the subject pronoun I to the subject pronoun we. If I'm talking to you and saying Mary or John, the he form, is dancing, eating, drinks, sleeps, then the subject has changed again. Now, what happens to make it so complicated in Spanish? In English, it's actually pretty easy. And hopefully you're actually seeing the grid that I've created. And if you're in my classes, I usually use this chart that you can see here with the singular on the left side, plural on the right side. Then I have first person, second person, and third person. If you tend to be a grammar geek, first person, second person, third person will mean something to you. If you're not and don't care, don't worry about that. But you do need to know that I is yo, nosotros is we, you familiar, you former, all of that stuff. That is important. Now what happens in English? When you conjugate a verb, it rarely changes. The verb form rarely changes. And I just noticed a mistake. Please forgive me. So if I'm going to say I speak Spanish, you, the familiar form, you know someone well, speaks Spanish. He speaks Spanish. It only changed there. We did an S. She speaks Spanish. And then the you, when you don't know someone well, the formal form speaks Spanish. Okay? We speak Spanish. You all, the Spain form, speak Spanish. And they speak Spanish. There was literally only one change to the verb form, and it went from speak to speaks. That's easy. What happens, though, is in Spanish, it becomes more complicated, and as you can see, and we'll go over this a little more thoroughly, but I've underlined and bolded the changes in the verb conjugations. Okay? And these do correspond one-to-one. So you can actually look up here and you can see where it says I speak Spanish. You can go down to the corresponding cell here and you can see yo hablo español. Okay? And you can see the changes in the verb forms. That's really, really important. Finally, before we need to move on, we need to understand what the present tense is. It's something that's happening right now. I study Spanish this semester. Okay? It typically happens. I study at the library every night. Or it happens in a more general sense. I speak Spanish. That's more general. So those are the three uses of the present tense in Spanish. And again, your book may have given you a slightly different angle, and that's okay, and that's the reason that I asked you to read the book. Okay? But just so that you can know, the present tense in Spanish is a little more flexible actually than the present tense in English. So, moving on to the Spanish form. Yo hablo español. Tú hablas español. Él habla español. Ella habla español. Usted habla español. Just a reminder, the to form is the familiar form. You know someone really, really well. You're good friends. It's a person who is maybe a child or someone that you're really, really close to. The usted form also says you. It does not change in English, but it's someone that you don't know well, or perhaps the form that you would use with your professor. Nosotros, nosotras hablamos español. We speak Spanish. If it's a group of girls saying we, then you would use the nosotras form. Vosotros and vosotras is the form that's used in Spain, sometimes in Spanish literature, and sometimes in the Bible. It's like saying you all. Okay, vosotros habláis español. And it may also be equivalent to the thou form if you're thinking biblically. But if you're reading this Bible in Spanish, you will see the vosotros form used. More common in Latin America is the ustedes form, which also means you all. But that's the common form that you actually hear in Latin America. Ellos, they speak Spanish. Ellos hablan español. Ellas hablan español. Ustedes, you all, hablan español. And that's the conjugation. Now, is it possible to leave the subject pronoun off? And the subject pronoun is in black. Yo, tú, él, ella, usted. Absolutely, in most cases. So if I simply say, hablo español, I know that I'm talking about yo. It can't be anybody else. Or if I simply say, hablamos español, I know that I'm talking about we. If I say habla español, I may have to specify the first time. Am I talking about John, él? Am I talking about Mary, ella? Am I talking about you directly, usted? So the first time I may need to specify. Either way, it is correct to put them. It's correct not to put them. That's one of the beauties of Spanish. You don't have to add that extra word. But in English, I can't simply say, speak Spanish. Don't know who you're talking about. You've got to specify he speaks Spanish, you speak Spanish, or if it's we we're talking about, we speak Spanish. All right? We're going to move on. Looking at some exercises, and I'm looking specifically en la página 36 en el libro, el ejercicio o la actividad 1-21. And if you'll find your book and look there with me, we're not going to go through these in all of them, but just to kind of let you know how this actually works. So, the first one says, Yo soy Juan y tengo una vida loca. Mi compañero de cuarto, Miguel y yo. So you automatically know if we're talking about Miguel y yo, if you're talking about another person and yourself, you are using the nosotros form. So I go back up to nosotros and I see that it's got to end in an A-M-O-S. Now, it's exactly the same spot in the grid. It is nosotros. So it should be tomamos. Nosotros tomamos 6 clases este semestre. We're taking 6 classes this semester. Okay? Looking at number 2. Miguel también, and the verb is trabajar. Think about that one. Pause me if you need to. We're talking about Miguel, that takes on the he form. Sure, it should be toma. I'm sorry, I used the wrong verb. Trabaja. Miguel trabaja 15 horas a la semana en la biblioteca. Miguel works. Remember in English, that's the only one that changes. Miguel trabaja. Número 3. Yo, and the verb is necesitar. It is an AR verb. Pause me until you get the right answer. And it should be yo necesito más información. Yo necesito más información. I'm sorry, yo necesito más dinero. Not information, it's dinero. Pero I don't work. And the verb is trabajar. So what if you... Yo is still the subject there. The subject has not changed. So what would trabajar be with the yo form? Okay? And if you get trabajo, you get it right. Pero no trabajo porque I play the saxophone. I play the saxophone. You have the subject there, yo, so you know it's it. And the answer would be yo toco el saxofón para una banda de jazz. 2 días a la semana yo, and the verb enseñar means to teach. 2 days a week I teach Spanish. Again, you have the yo given. So it is enseño español a unos chicos de la escuela primaria. I teach Spanish to some kids from an elementary school. Now, it's easy when the subject is given. Yo, tú, Miguel. Miguel is he. Sometimes you will come across exercises or activities where the subject is not given, or maybe it's given prior in the sentence. But that is a first crucial step. You have to know what the subject is before you can conjugate the verb. Okay? Let's move on and do one outside the textbook to finish up. And this one is from a website called SpanishSpanish.com. And you will hopefully hear the answers to this. We'll do about 5 of these. All right? So if I've got Alejandro y yo, remember, anybody plus yourself automatically becomes we. If you're included and another person, it's we, so it should be hablamos.
Alejandro y yo hablamos español.
And so hopefully you heard the person say Alejandro y yo hablamos español. So it's I dance merengue. And you should know that the answer is
Yo bailo el merengue.
Yo bailo el merengue. Raúl y Marisol. 2 people. Now you don't have the subject pronoun here, but if you're thinking about 2 people, you are not included. It becomes the ellos. That's the subject pronoun that would correspond. Just like in English, I could say Raúl and Marisol speaks French, or I could say they speak French. Both mean the same thing. They, the pronoun, takes the place. So it is
Raúl y Marisol hablan francés.
Raúl y Marisol hablan francés. We sing well. The nosotros form direct should be
Nosotros cantamos bien.
Nosotros cantamos bien. Ana y Esteban swim every day. And of course, 2 people, you are not included, so it's not nosotros. It becomes the they form. Ana y Esteban. Oops, not letting me type. Sorry about that. Nadan.
Esteban nadan todos los días.
Nadan todos los días. Okay, we're going to stop there. There's plenty more verbs on this page if you want to come back to it. Also, toward the end, I've given you a couple of other resources. There's some present tense verb practice at this first website that you see. And then also, I've talked to you about the little guy, Tontito Frito, and he also gives another explanation. I hope this has been helpful, and we will see you in the next video if you choose to participate.